So, 2025 has come to an end. At this point last year, I had 8 Extreme Demons completed. Today, I've got 29. That's 21 levels to cover over the course of this video, 3 of which were new hardest. Like last time, I'll go through in the order I completed them and give you my thoughts, although I'll have to be quick this time so that the video doesn't get too long. So, without further ado, let's hop right into it. Starting off, we have Sonic Wave Rebirth, which was technically a new hardest, albeit a very underwhelming one. The level is inherently just Sonic Wave with some flashier 2.0 style decoration and a few very tiny buffs, so it really was just a case of, it's some free list points, so I might as well do it. But in all honesty, had the level not been low-hanging fruit, I would likely not have played it. Because while my experience wasn't too bad, all things considered, and I only had 1 death in the final wave section, the Sonic Wave Rebirth really doesn't do much to make the original better, which is why I've come to dislike the level. Again, it wasn't horrible for me to play, but just not very deserving of the new hardest title in my opinion. WaveBreaker is a level that I had discovered through a friend of mine, and if you don't know it, it's an old collab level hosted by the Australian creator Lemons. This one actually ended up being pretty fun for me, and I even got a decent fluke on it, with my worst fail being 72%. The level does show its age a bit with its overall balancing, particularly at the beginning of the drop, as well as its decoration, but I still very much like playing it, and it's turned out to be one of my favorite lower end Extreme Demons. If Ship and Wave are your skills, it's definitely a level I would recommend. We all know Sakupen Hell, and once you reach a certain skill, it's one of those levels that you kinda just have to do at some point. Unsurprisingly, for a hack-verified former top 1 originally made in 1.9, its difficulty is entirely carried by the 3 extremely tight wave sections. Yet despite that, and despite my expectation that the level wasn't going to be a good experience, it actually turned out to be fairly enjoyable. Was eerily consistent in that I was pretty reliably reaching the final wave in the last few days that I played it, and I even got a new best of 85% one attempt before beating the level. So while many people seem to really hate Sakupen Hell, I enjoyed playing it, and even still occasionally do runs on it. After taking a bit of a break, I wanted to finish up the Vortex series, which led me to Friday Vortex. Now, I very much like the Vortex series, but in my opinion, Friday Vortex is the weakest among the 3 levels from that series that I have completed. It does have some of the characteristic design patterns, albeit with a mostly 1.9 style decoration in this case, and still has some decent click sync, but it just felt a lot less polished compared to its predecessors, Bete and Belengu Vortex, especially with the beginning of the wave section. But it's not a bad level overall, and I would say my experience was generally alright. Redemption was another I kinda want to break from hard stuff level, and it turned out to be a convenient pick for learning to play using a SEO device. It's a relatively old Sonic Wave inspired level, but this one happens to be a very easy Extreme Demon. And thankfully, it was a much better experience than what I got with Sonic Wave and Sonic Wave Rebirth. This was also another fluke, this time from 78%, and so instead of the slow and often inconsistent grind that happens with Sonic Wave levels, this was a relatively quick and enjoyable completion. Infinite Inversion happens to be the first 2.2 Extreme Demon that I completed. It was a totally random find from scrolling through a Reddle, and upon realizing that it was a 2.2 level, I was somewhat worried that I would get hit with all kinds of camera and shader trigger abuse. Thankfully, Infinite Inversion does not have any of that, and it has since become probably my favorite 9 Circles Extreme Demon. The level did take me a pretty long time to complete, and I got very unlucky with 2 97% deaths and a 98% death, but I liked it enough that actually didn't bother me too much. I still love playing it and happily recommend it to anyone looking for a wave-focused level. I have very mixed feelings about Astrophobia. On one hand, it really looks great, and for a level made on the 1.9 private server, I like it a lot. But on the other, it wasn't the greatest to play once I got to the second half of the wave. I don't know if this was an issue with me, but everything after the break section just felt really inconsistent, and I ended up with a lot of deaths between 70 and 80%. It's far from the worst I've played, but it still turned out to be pretty rage-inducing. I honestly did not have high expectations for Poltergeist Reborn, knowing that it's a super buffed remake of an already horribly balanced Circles level. And well, there were no surprises. Poltergeist Reborn was a very quick completion, but a lot of the time was spent dying to the first 33%, particularly the insanely tight beginning of the wave. And of course, in classic me fashion, I had some silly fails in the far easier second half of the level, including at the final input of the level. So, not surprisingly, this is not a level that I would recommend. Azure Fiesta was a level that I came across during a clan tournament. Now, I don't want to add more to the Durami verification hate fire that seems to be a thing in the GD community, but Azure Fiesta was genuinely a horrible experience for me. The level is, at least in my opinion, very unbalanced, being particularly annoying near the beginning and end. The middle of the level does make for some decently fun runs, but other than that, it was a pretty brutal experience, to say the least. Molten Core is perhaps one of the weirdest experiences I've had on a level. It was originally meant to be a challenge for me to work on high CPS gameplay, and it actually made me switch once and for all to using a SEO device, since it was legitimately painful for me to play using a mouse. This level's difficulty is pretty heavily skewed towards the first half of the wave, and at first I progressed very slowly by getting 1 to 3% further each day. However, after I reached the second half of the wave, I somehow fluked the level all the way from 53%, which is by far the largest fluke I've ever gotten. That alone turned the whole experience around from a kind of slow and frustrating grind into an actually kind of enjoyable experience. I was looking to finish up a Red L 9 Circles Pack 1, and so I came across Cerebral Hemorrhage. This is an interesting level in that it has more dual-focus gameplay and is a relatively easy Extreme Demon, unlike most 9 Circles Extreme Demon levels. It ultimately turned out to be a relatively quick and enjoyable completion, with my only gripe being some awkward blind transitions. Given the generally poor reputation that 9 Circles Extreme Demons have, this level was actually a pretty good find, to say the least. Continuing on with the push to finish a Red L 9 Circles Pack 1, we have Project Alter, a 1.9 private server level. Like with Cerebral Hemorrhage, this was a quick completion, but unfortunately a very frustrating one this time. I do like what this level tries to do to shake up the 9 Circle design pattern a bit, but it really misses hard with gameplay balancing and ends up carried heavily by wave choke points. In fairness, my experience could have been much worse since I was lucky enough to fluke the entire ending, including the very blind last few clicks, but at the end of the day, I didn't like playing it. Thunderzone is quite possibly the most disappointing completion for me this year. It's a 1.9 private server level that has many similarities to the Golden, particularly with its primarily wave-focused difficulty. Despite the wave sections being major choke points, I actually had a pretty good time playing from the drop, and I even still sometimes do runs from there. What really ruined things for me was the incredibly irritating pre-drop, which takes up almost half of this level's runtime. It's almost 30 seconds of slow timings, and the physics issues I experienced at the beginning did not make things any better. Altogether, while it was a very quick completion given how difficult this level is, I ended up not liking my time spent. Moving on to the second new hardest this year, we have Paracosm. The motivation for me to play this level was entirely just that Sonic Wave Rebirth didn't feel like a true new hardest, and I wanted something that was more deserving of that designation. I was fully aware of what the level was like going in, and, well, it more or less met expectations. While it didn't take me all that long to complete the level, it was a very rough experience. A whole lot of deaths to the first half of the wave, a lot of deaths because I could barely see the spikes and slopes against the background, and of course, a lot of chokes in the long post-drop section. It unfortunately ended up becoming one of my least favorite levels due to that, but at the very least, it did mean that I had finally gotten a proper new hardest after over a year. Bete Noire has an interesting story behind it. It used to be around Sonic Wave difficulty, and that version had a poor reputation due to its gameplay balancing. It was nerfed sometime in the middle of 2025 and re-verified by PersonHuman42, and that version is what I played. Since the nerf, it actually plays relatively well, and I genuinely enjoyed my time with it. My only major complaints were the very flashy and obstructive decoration style, which of course led to a lot of deaths because I couldn't see what I was doing, and, well, the last ship section, which was a bit of a choke point. Altogether though, the nerf has made it a pretty enjoyable level in my opinion. Northern Essence marks the first time I picked an Extreme Demon to play purely by chance. It's a big collab from the 1.9 private server, and it being a Royan verification, it should be no surprise that the level is primarily wave focused. Now, this level is somewhat notorious for its very hard ending, which did mean that I had an unfortunate fail at 94%, but other than that, it was a genuinely good level to play, and I largely enjoyed my time with it. On to the highlight of the year, the hardest level I have completed so far, and my first list demon, Cosmic Cyclone. I had wanted to complete this level for a long time actually, and even said that I wanted to do it as my 100th demon all the way back in February. Seeing that actually pan out now is pretty crazy to say the least. And believe it or not, Cosmic Cyclone turned out to be pretty fun to play. It took me around a month or so to complete the level, and in that period I was able to make relatively consistent progress. The experience did get brought down a bit after I ended up getting stuck in the second wave section for a long while, but ultimately, Cosmic Cyclone is the first new hardest of mine in a good while that I've genuinely enjoyed, and somewhat ironically, is the first new hardest that I've fluked by a decent amount, with my worst fail being 76%. Coming fresh off a new hardest, I wanted something easy to do, which is how I ended up playing Iridium. This is an interesting level. It's a very skill-based, ship and wave-focused level with some simple pulsing color effects, and honestly, not too bad of an option for a first Extreme. It did have a somewhat similar experience to Thunderzone due to the slow, timing-heavy pre-drop, but since this level is much easier overall, it wasn't quite as annoying to deal with. Sapphire Angel was a level that was automatically picked for me by Reddle, and at first glance it appeared fairly promising. It's a kind of spiritual sequel to Scarlet Surge and features similar decorations, but this level is balanced around a few unusual wave choke points and a relatively nerve-wracking ending. The 4x wave section at 30% was a particularly hard part, especially at the mini-wave spam. Interestingly though, it wasn't that bad to play since it actually got pretty consistent in the later parts, so while it was a bit of a pain to get far, the long runs were pretty satisfying. I came across 4 elements as I was trying to pick up a few more extremes to end the year. This is yet another 1.9 private server level, but unlike a lot of those, this one is surprisingly not too wave focused. While the level generally went alright, it did feel like I got a good number of deaths from weird alignment issues or from choke point timings near the end, including one at the wave gap at 94%. In hindsight though, it wasn't too bad for an easy extreme, all things considered. Capping things off for 2025 is 1330X, a collab level vaguely resembling Requiem. I had wanted to complete this level for a good while, but it unfortunately didn't turn out to be a good experience. This level is infamous for its final ship and wave sections, which heavily carry the difficulty, and that unfortunately means that you'll likely choke a lot at the ending. Well, I certainly did, and it dragged out what was already shaping up to be a pretty rough experience. Alright, that is every Extreme Demon I completed in 2025. Quite the year, to say the least. Before I end this, I'd like to thank all of you out there that supported me. You guys are awesome. Thanks for watching, and I hope you all have an amazing 2026.